Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
But what good are we as a society if we say that's okay? We say that's acceptable because that's prison. You can't treat people like animals and then turn around and get mad when these individuals are released and they're acting like animals. I mean, honestly, what sense does that make? A man isn't measured by how he treats somebody who's good. Treating people who are good is easy. A man is measured by how he deals with evil. Maybe I've been looking at this case against Richard Allen all wrong. Issues set aside, everything's been laid out. But this entire case hinges on one witness. And it's not Dr. Monica Waller. So welcome to the point. Let's get to it. Everything said here is alleged. Please do your own research, form your own opinion, and let me know that opinion because this is an open discussion channel where we try to be fair. And if more fair coverage on this story and others is something you're lacking, subscribe to this channel and hit that like button down below. Because in order to be fair, we need to see this as the jurors are, not how we're seeing it from the outside looking in. So who's this key witness and what has the state shown? To me personally, timing is everything, and timing is certainly essential within this particular story. And I feel like the vast majority of y'all would agree with that. And the 2:13 p.m. Bridge Guy image is a key part of this particular timeline. We know Richard Allen was at the park. He said he was at the park. Law enforcement is trying to say he was at the bridge. But we know the issues with the witnesses when it comes to who Bridge Guy was. Betsy gave one description while Sarah gave another, and those other witnesses gave a description that was completely different from the previous two. And their testimony is on record. Not one of those witnesses who took the stand identified Richard Allen as Bridge Guy. The state's bullet expert made an interesting case saying she could identify the tool marks left on the casings. And she matched tool marks from the round left at the scene versus what they found in Richard Allen's home. But the biggest question with her testimony is, was the jury awake to hear cross-examination? Were they actually paying attention when she said she couldn't exclude other weapons? And I believe it's safe to say that it was an absolute mistake for them to not test any of Ron Logan's weapons. The biggest controversy to hit the news with the DNA expert was that clump of hair they found that they didn't test as soon as they found it. And the fact law enforcement said they were looking for a male suspect is a huge error. But let's be honest, the list of investigative errors in this particular case is way too long to list, especially in one video. Which has a lot of people saying the investigator screwed this whole thing up. Richard Allen's the guy. He confessed on a recorded line. And I trust law enforcement not to get this wrong. Which is fine. If you want to blanket trust law enforcement, then you can blanket trust law enforcement all day. This is a free country. But I'm a skeptic and I want the proof. But those recorded confessions were intended to be the final blow in the state's case against Richard Allen. And at or around lunchtime, I was like a lot of y'all seeing these headlines pop up in our newsfeed. Richard Allen confessed to his prison psychologist. Richard Allen made confessions to his prison therapist. But like everything else in this case, we have controversy with her. But let's be clear about a couple of things first. Richard Allen did say those things. He did confess. It was recorded. That 100% did happen. But y'all, they broke that man in prison. They took a man not convicted of a crime and placed him in solitary confinement, where people were calling him a BK. People were telling him that he needed to pass himself away. They broke that man, they got a confession, and then they tried to say he was faking it. That's the story they want us to believe. And if that's something you believe, please feel free to let me know. And that testimony from the prison staff was a litmus test for your humanity, and that's the only way I can see it. If you sat there and heard that testimony and you weren't bothered, quite frankly, something's wrong with you. You need to call a priest, you need to drink some holy water, and you need to get some scripts. I 100% agree inmates need to be punished. But what good are we as a society if we say that's okay? We say that's acceptable because that's prison. You can't treat people like animals and then turn around and get mad when these individuals are released and they're acting like animals. I mean, honestly, what sense does that make? A man isn't measured by how he treats somebody who's good. Treating people who are good is easy. A man is measured by how he deals with evil. And quite frankly, in the state of Indiana, you guys are falling short. You guys are falling short hard. There is no excuse to treat people that way. And the controversy surrounding Dr. Wall discredits her in terms of her opinion to a degree. Her being a follower of this case was a piece of it. She can't on one hand say she had the ability to separate her interests from her job, while at the same time using her job to pursue her interests. Her entire personal opinion is skewed. Quite frankly, that's not how this is supposed to work. You are a paid professional. Be professional. But her biggest issue was Richard Allen was in solitary confinement 13 times longer than the maximum time allowed. And while he's in the middle of this confession period, so to speak, he's apparently faking. But people are forgetting she said he was displaying this type of behavior long before he started confessing. So how can he be faking in one situation and not faking in the other? When you're going into psychosis, you can fall in and out of psychosis, right? I'm not a mental health expert. I'm not a doctor. I'm just asking the question. It seems awfully convenient that she can sit there and say, this particular part of his time here, he was normal. This other time, he was going through some things. He either was or he wasn't. And yes, it was confirmed on the stand that he was given medicine against his will. The same type of medicine that is used to treat people who are suffering from hallucinations and going through delusional states. So if all this was fake, why are you giving them that stuff? So to me personally, and this is just me personally, she was not the star witness the state thought she was going to be, in my own opinion. If you saw it differently, you can let me know, but she fell flat in terms of credibility. But it's what Richard Allen said in his confession that actually ties to the star witness and the key to the whole story the state is trying to say. In his confessions, excluding the behind-the-scenes stuff, and this won't take long for those of y'all that already know, Richard Allen said he went to go visit his mom in Mexico, Indiana. He declined a lunch invitation, had a few beers, and hit the trail. That is where he found Abby and Libby. He also said he fumbled with his weapon at the bridge, and that's how they were able to locate that round. And I already know that doesn't make sense. But he ordered the girls to go down the hill where he had intended to commit SA. But he goes on to say that a van startled him. And he did what he did to Abby and Libby. He then placed branches on those two and took off back to his car off the trail. Prosecutors are trying to say that at 2:31, phone pings indicate that Libby and Abby went down the hill. And the phone pings stopped at 2:32. And Brad Weber told investigators he was pulling into his driveway at or around 2:30 when he got home from work. This is why Brad's the key to everything. And to me, this is the closest thing to evidence that the state actually has. This is the detail only the suspect would know. We all have to admit that if we're trying to be fair and objective. Only the suspect would know that Brad Weber was pulling his vehicle into his driveway at or around 2:30. The only possible issue to this particular part of the story is Richard Allen did have his discovery, and he did have a therapist who was feeding him information that she was reading online. So it isn't out of the realm of possible that he had learned this piece of information from her. And since she has no notes and none of this was apparently recorded, who's to say she didn't say it? And he also didn't start making all these confessions until he had that discovery. At least that's how I heard it. Now, if I'm wrong, you can let me know down below. And of course, the defense is going to do everything they can to attack this particular part of the timeline. Because this one witness, that last eyewitness, is the key to everything. With him, the state has a case. Without him, the state continues to have absolutely nothing, and they don't have much to begin with. And the only real question right now is, will this particular piece of the story hold up? Now, for some reason, and this is absolutely crazy, when Brad was pressed on the stand about his location, he absolutely blew up on the defense. And this is coming from content creators and legacy media. But clearly the defense has been wanting to speak to this guy for some time. So much so that instead of arguing with this guy on the stand, they walked up and slapped him with a subpoena. I mean, that's absolutely crazy. They subpoenaed that man in front of God and the jury all at the same time. So clearly they have reason to believe that Brad was up to some shenanigans and he may not be where he told law enforcement he was. And all that being said, who's honestly lacking reasonable doubt right now? Just to me and me alone, this case has reasonable doubt to spare. To legitimately say you don't have reasonable doubt based off the evidence that's been presented in court is absolutely mind-blowing to me. And we'll just have to see what Brad was up to when he takes the stand again. Because the defense hasn't even presented their case yet. And I'll be honest, I'm not even seeing probable cause at this point. I didn't even talk about the 60 plus cars that were in and around the area during the time of this incident. Y'all be safe now.